is to take our basic music knowledge and build upon it. We have talked about the basic components of a drum set: kick, snare, hi-hat. We've talked about what a measure of music is, that it's 4 quarter notes. Those quarter notes can be broken down into eighths, 16ths, 32nds, 64ths. So a measure or a bar of music is 8 eighth notes or 16 16ths. A basic drum beat is going to have that kick drum falling on quarter notes 1 and 3, snare drum on quarter notes or beats 2 and 4, and a hi-hat playing a more consistent pattern of quarters, eighths, sixteenths, or a combination thereof. Super, super generalized statement there, but pretty accurate to start. What we need to talk about now are the keys on a piano, because you need to know the keys on a piano. If you play piano, you have a huge head start, and we'll define kind of what it means, because the piano is everything when you're programming music. If you want a violin sound, you're still going to be playing a note on the piano or drawing a note on the piano. So we have to get to know these notes. Looking at this image here of a piano laid out, what do you notice? Some things that I notice are the visual pattern of the different keys. I see 2 black keys, then 3 black keys, 2 black keys again, then 3 more black keys. And if I were looking at an 88 key large piano, I would see more of that 2-3-2-3 pattern. What else do I notice? I notice that if we start at the beginning of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then it starts over again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There are only 7 notes in music. I don't want to talk about European H and all that. There's 7 notes in music. I notice that this C hashtag and D hashtag, which is really actually C sharp and D sharp. But when I look at this set of 2 black keys, it says D flat and E flat, or D lowercase b, D flat and E flat. C sharp and D flat are the exact same thing. This one note I could add, actually, why don't I just do that? It looks kind of weird, but there you have it. Okay, actually, I'll do it like this. Boom. Okay, the same note has 2 names: C sharp, D flat, D sharp, E flat, F sharp, G flat. And really, all I want you to think about maybe is, so far, if you're going up from the left to the right, up the piano, we'll call this F sharp. You know, if you're going from F to F sharp, we'll call it that. If you're going down from G, we'll call it G flat. It really has to do with the scale that you're in, the key signature, the type of voicings that you're using, but we don't really need to know that. What you do need to know is that this key, this black key, is either C sharp or D flat, and you need to be able to find it. You need to know that in between the 2 black keys is D, and will always be D. So speaking of D to D, or C to C, or A to A, that same note, 8 whole tones apart, is called an octave. So starting on A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we land at A again, 8. Okay? There are 12 semitones. So if I count, A sharp, B, that way. In fact, let me bring up Soundtrap and see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I shouldn't have counted A first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? 12 semitones. Um, what is a chord? A chord is a combination of notes played together. Now, does that mean that I can just sit on the piano and play an awesome chord? Probably not, although for Halloween that might sound decent. If we look at these blue X's, C, E, and G, that is called C major. It's the C major triad. It makes up the basic C major chord. We're not going to get any further into triads or inversions yet, but I do want you to know that if I give you, say, a template or a tablature, it might look something like this, and if there's X's on those notes, it means those are the chords those are the notes to make up that chord, and they're played more or less at the same time. Of course, there's plenty of variation there as well, but as we start more or less playing at the same time, that's what a chord is. So actually, hope I can do this. I'm going to draw in some chords. So in Soundtrap, I have created, in fact, I will just go ahead and create it. No, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to continue on with some of these basics. Let's just look at what it will look like when we draw in some chords. How about that? So this is a chord progression. Let me make sure that I'm still on my piano. This is a chord progression. C major to C major 7 to F major. Yep. It happens to be the chords to Imagine by John Lennon. But this is what it's going to look like in what's called the piano roll. So can I zoom in a little bit here? I'm zooming out. That's not what I want. Whoa, interesting. All right, let's keep going that way. Isn't that weird? It's getting bigger as I minimize. So this is a note, and it looks like, if I'm gathering that the grid is 16th notes, this C note is being held for 3 quarter notes, 3 beats. The next chord is E, same thing, 3 beats, and G, 3 beats. And then the 7th is being added, the B, and this chord is simply playing for 1 beat, 1 quarter note. You can see how there's a separation. And then it goes to the F major, where you have F, A, and C. This looks, that looks like it's drawn out to play for an entire measure, 4 quarter notes. And there's an F being played lower. We say an F in the bass. So that's 3 chords drawn in to a DAW. This happens to be Pro Tools. Every DAW has some kind of a grid like this that you draw your notes into. The next instrument that we need to think about is a bass. And growing up as a bass player, it's just the basic rule of thumb is that the bass plays the lowest note of a chord, but an octave lower. All right? So again, this note is an octave below this note. They are the same note, but this one is an octave below. So if this is F, this is F, an octave lower. Same note, but that bass it just gives it backbeat. not backbeat. It gives it some backbone. I say here that bass rarely plays chords, but that is definitely a generalization. But one of the first mistakes young producers make, in my experience, is to draw in a chord with the bass instrument. And that's not what you want to do. It becomes too crowded and low-endy. So looking at this same set of chords, the C, the C7, and the F, these red dots, these red lines represent a different instrument, a bass instrument, whether it's a bass guitar, electric guitar, or a synthesizer of some kind, are playing the same notes, just an octave lower. Now, a bass can certainly play notes within the chord or notes within the scale, but basic rule of thumb, the bass plays the lowest note in the chord, which is also called the root. Okay, so if we were to go back and look at our initial chord here, C major, it's called C major because it starts on C. And again, we're not going to talk about the first and second intervals of inversions of C major. We're just talking about the C major triad, C, E, and G. So it is a C chord. C is the tonic or the root. And in the bass, you would play C an octave lower and be golden. I'm going to leave it at that.